Добрый день, дорогие друзья, коллеги.
Good afternoon, dear guests, dear colleagues. So today we are hosting the Moscow Financial Forum, and together with Moscow, uh, we have organized such a forum for a second time in a row. I should say that yes, actually today we're celebrating the Day of Financial Experts, and today with colleagues and with other professionals we invite a leading expert also from financial organization from abroad. Why are we doing that? So we're doing that in order to exchange opinion and to just to make sure that we are on the same wave. And what we're doing in Russia. This financial forum coincides with the end of the budgetary process. We are now close to the finishing lines, and next week the budget commission is scheduled for next week. So actually, the financial forum allows us to discuss those solutions that have been taking in terms of the public spending, and of course the financial forum is also supported by the central bank. And this way we would like to express our gratitude to our colleagues. So this platform for financial experts and this discussion of very important financial issues is the very right thing to do. This is something that can allow us to come up with the right solutions and actually assess results already achieved, have a common stance and vision of our further actions in terms of public spending and budget and funds allocation. We do plan to organize such forums in future, and we will be discussing key issues related to the international funds and also the economic situation in Moscow. And I'm able to answer your question. So let's give the floor to Moscow 20, Russia 24. We talk a lot about challenges and opportunities, but if we try to be a little bit more specific, what are the real challenges that could also turn into opportunities for us to stabilize the economy, and about what duration could we actually talk? Well, speaking about duration, challenges, and opportunities, well, I think that you're well aware about them. These are sanctions imposed on Russia, and further probably further sanctions that would be imposed. What's kind of reaction we can expect from the Russian side? First of all, we need to do all it takes to rely on our own power and to use all our economic instruments to attract foreign investment. It will force us to create more favorable conditions so that investors working with our Russian partners keep on boosting their business, open new companies. On the other hand, we also need to create better conditions, more favorable conditions for investment, despite all the sanctions and other challenges that we might face. This is our major task. As for the responsibility of the Minister of Finance and of prognosis that we can make, I can see that there is a need to further stabilize and the inflation and lower the inflation level, also to lower economic rates, and also to withdraw this oil and gas needle from the body of this country, because actually this was the reason of and actually triggered the crisis that we witnessed in Russia, because this light-minded I would say yes, slight-minded attitude to the fact that prices for our exported goods will always be high can actually lead to the situation where we found ourselves. And we actually had to pay, for example, volatility of our exchange rate and so on and so forth. And in order to avoid such situation in future and to smoothing a little bit factors, adverse conditions, we need to have an independent financial system budget and fully comply with our obligations with regard to the external conditions. This is actually the budget and the basics of the gadgets that we plan for the 3 years to come. So the deficit will be cut down to by 13%. It was already mentioned today. We also cut reserve costs starting from 2011. We start to only accumulate. As for the oil prices, is well, the rate is gonna be $40 per barrel. So no matter how hard it's gonna be, still we need to think about costs and benefits, and we need to understand that there are always some external factors that can make us to cut costs again, to see some lack of stability in the financial market. That is why budgets must provide us with confidence and also confidence amongst our investors. But a lot depends on the budget, and we have said that a lot. So budget for the 3 years to come tells us that we must fully comply with our obligation without increasing the tax burden, without any changes in the volatility of the financial market. So this is our major task, and we follow. That's what we see as a Minister of Finance.
Anton, you mentioned budget. What deficit of budget you expect at the end of this year, and in 1918, will we be able to avoid a deficit of the budget? How the structure of income will change? Today, now we expect 2% of GDP deficit. We planned it, and it became possible because of faster growth rate of the economics. We expected 0.5% and will receive 2, and as far as the forecast, it's 2.1%. We see that there is a higher growth rate of real wages of the population. It affects consumer demand, it affects taxes, that comes to budget system. So our task is to continue these dynamics, not to undermine the beginning of economic growth, but to reinforce it and reinforce the confidence of investors and businessmen. Deficit for the next year is planned to be 1.4% of GDP. And as the budget rule requires, the volume 0.8, 0.9% of GDP. And so-called oil and gas deficit without the income from export of oil and gas will shrink further, and 1920 will get to 6% of GDP. It's quite a sustainable level, and we can say that the budget is almost reduced its dependence on oil and gas income, and we need to get more reserves. It will get to 4.5 trillion of rubles. On the one hand, it's not little, but on the other hand, it's less than it was before. The sustainability of financial state amid the dependence from crude materials should be reinforced by reserves. As far as expenditure is concerned, we'll pay more attention to the investment on so-called human resources. It will be defined by priority expenditures on our priority projects, education, healthcare, infrastructure, transport. By the enhancement of budget, additional income will be redirected to the areas that allow us to support economic growth on the one hand, and on the other hand provide profitability of our citizens. It's the task for it's a goal of every government to support their citizens and to provide all conditions for business development. And this is the goal of a current draft of the budget that will be introduced at the end of this month. Yes, please. By 2018, you said that the deficit is 1.4, but there was 1.6 planned. Yeah, we reduced the forecast. Yeah, we change macroeconomic forecast. We expect more income, and the parameter of budget deficit also changes. Good afternoon, Anton Germovich. First, are you planning to change a loan program? And the second question, how are the negotiations of debt restructuring of Venezuela is going? Are there any decisions on this issue? Let's start with the second question. We had a request from our colleagues or from Venezuela to make a debt restructuring because they have a difficulty with the debt. We are working on it in the framework of Paris Club of Creditors on the one hand, and on the other hand, we are implementing bilateral contact in order to elaborate the mechanism of debt restructuring. We are in the process of this work. It is not finalized yet, and I'm sure that we'll find a mutually beneficial solution with Venezuela. As far as the loans in 2018, in general, we do not exclude the possibility to clarify this program because we have fulfilled our plans on external loans and will fulfill our plans in the framework of exchange of one euro bonds to another euro bonds. As far as internal loans is concerned, we see a sustainable demand on our bonds, and the volume of demand is 3 or more times more than supply of these securities. There can be clarifies in the loans, but I don't think that there will be any drastic change in the program of loans. We do not expect it. In the governmental goals, we'll again compare it and we'll have a look on the expenditure part for current year, and we'll define the volume of sources. At the first, there will be non-oil and gas incomes. additional resource for the budget can be is internal loans resources on the market. So we'll have a look and we'll define the necessity of funding of the goals set by the government, and we'll define the resources. Mic to the speaker. We'll discuss the final proposal in October. And a question from Izvestia newspaper. Anton, earlier you said that the Ministry of Finance is preparing some projects with Asian and the new development bank created by BRICS countries. What this project is and in what condition it is now? Now we are working proactively in the framework of the new development bank of BRICS. We have adopted a range of projects for $560 million. This is the projects of construction of power stations in Karelia, the program of small cities development. It's a program and a project of the development of transport infrastructure in Ufa. All these projects were vastly discussed in certain structures of the new Bank of Development, and there will be implemented. And as I already mentioned, the total sum is $560 million. As far as OIB questions and the interrelation with the Asian Bank of Infrastructure and Investment, our collaboration is more difficult, but still we are discussing the projects on the development of infrastructure in the Russian Federation. I reiterate that there are still no solutions in that area on crediting of projects in Russia, so there are still no solutions. Question from TV channel Dost. Thank you. Anton, you have mentioned the growth of non-oil and gas income. What sources of this growth are, and if it's true that the expenditures can grow by 100 billion of rubles. So I'm speaking about the following year. If there are such plans for this year, this question is also for this year then. Frankly speaking, in 2017 and 2018, we see a possibility for expenditure growth in terms of spending of non-oil and gas incomes. In spite of the risks and challenges that we see with the forming and implementation of very ambitious plans, the plans on planned expenditures. And we see the increase of expenditure by 100 billion rubles. This money will be devoted to support of the Russian Federation subjects. And we are planning to support the regions, primarily the regions that have problems with budgets, in the framework of first important tasks. So we'll support the regions of the Russian Federation. This year will help and will support the creation of institutions in order to support the growth of economics in industries The program was suggested by Ministry of Industry and Development, and it will help to increase the tax basis. And we also will support the solution of some problems in defense area. Regarding the next year, we see that new macro forecast considers faster growth rate of economy, considers growth of income and growth of other budget indicators. Will clarify the forecast, both for income part and both for expenditure part. For the next year, the general volume of expenditure can increase by 100 billion rubles. We have already discussed these issues in the government, and this will be implemented in the budget draft for the next 3 years. Our general characteristics and general materials are under discussion in the Commission, in the government of the Russian Federation.
And the targets have been identified. I have already said that it's over $1 billion, and they will be used to work with our priority projects. Also, certain assistance will be provided to some Russian entities. Regions, we will be working with different infrastructure problems in a number of regions, Crimea, Far East and Vladivostok, macro regions that will be intensely supported next year. Also, thanks to the improvement of the macroeconomic prognosis. Vitaly Khanin, Brand TV. And today, one of the opportunities, but at the same time, one of the challenges was mentioned cryptocurrency. So the Minister of Finance has already shaped its own position on that, and it's possible to earn using that currency. No one is going to do that, actually. Cryptocurrency, this is a financial instrument, a surrogate financial instrument, volatile financial instrument, because the cost of cryptocurrency is determined by the power of computers who are connected to the system. Accordingly, the cost of this currency is exposed to a very high level of speculation, and it really progresses very quickly. That is why any talks about stable cryptocurrency rates, investments into cryptocurrency, something that we can hardly talk about. The government does understand that cryptocurrency, this is something that exists de facto. It cannot be forbidden, outlawed, but it needs to be regulated. The Minister of Finance elaborated a law that is expected to regulate the rules of acquisition, circulation and registration of those willing to buy this instrument in order to make our citizens, those who are not protected by the volatility of this currency, just to enable them to use this currency in a professional way. So we just want to raise the awareness. Considering the objectivity of the factor that it does already exist in the market, we want to provide for the needed level of regulation and to make sure that investment into this currency are well regulated, and that investment and investors willing to invest know all the risks related to investing into this currency. Again, I want to reiterate that this is a very risky investment, very volatile. Since this instrument does exist in the market, our task is to regulate its existence. РИА Новости. Milo Kuzmich, РИА Новости. Could you please say, are you going to limit the possibility to acquire this currency for individuals, or for example, compared to business and legal entities? Well, actually individuals buy this surrogate. They buy that currency from unprofessional people, dishonest people who want to trick them. And that is why we find it and consider participation of the individuals possible, but such acts, such things, they must be absolutely transparent, must be calculated, must be clear to all the participants, and all the cryptocurrency transaction must be monitored by the relevant authorities. These are the conditions that we put forward. You mean, how can you actually bar individuals from using the currency just to block the site? No, we're talking about the price of shares and the price for them where you use cryptocurrency. We have a sector, a shadow sector, and we want to change it. So we suppose that acquisition and selling of such an instrument must be made just like bonds of federal bonds in a similar way, which are now high profit and absolutely reliable instruments. By the way, we actually even exceeded the plans that we had for federal bonds, and we plan third emission by the end of this year. So in case you think where to earn money, so I suggest that you should leave aside cryptocurrency and think more about federal bonds. You will never lose, that's for sure. Bloomberg. Yes, just to clarify, Andrei Belkov, China actually forbid ICO. So what about your position on ICO? In perspective, are you going to outlaw it or regulate? We're going to regulate this very sphere. Anya, Bloomberg agency. So only questions are only Bloomberg. Only seems like there is no one other than Bloomberg. So you said that after elections there won't be any additional tax burden. Probably there will be change in value-added tax, or maybe some changes related to the pension age, etc. You said that there is some work that is being done in this sphere. It would be nice if you commented on that a little bit. We several times said that we're not going to have any additional tax burden. Of course, I'm talking about subprime taxpayers. I mean, those who make payments on a regular basis. But those who avoid taxation, we use different instruments, and we also looking for a new one in order to find a remedy to that, so that everyone is equal to the tax legislation, so that everyone has the same competitive potential, etc. I just want to repeat that we are not going to increase tax the burden, but as for the policy that is now being conducted in general, it is not going to change. The head of the tax survey talked today about this, using all the instruments, starting from marking, improvements of the monitoring system over different products, will be intensifying interaction between different service, tax service, customs service, etc. We want also to establish more friendly, let's put it that way, and better relations between all the players involved. And in the end of the day, it will give us an opportunity to improve tax collection and to improve the administration level, which creates all the conditions for the legalization of the business segment. And this is one of our tasks that we set for the ministry. Oh, you know, our ministry keep preparing a lot of different suggestions, instructions, and during the plenary session it was mentioned that our growth rate could make up ideally 1.5% of GDP. If you want to have faster growth, then it takes certain structural reforms and measures, more fair resource distribution, and also funds allocation. That is why we are preparing a number of assets and a whole variety of different suggestions that will be analyzed by the government, and the final solution will be taken in line with the strategy worked out for the near future. You mentioned a 3-year period, and you also put there 10% dividends of Sberbank. Have you already had a talk with Sberbank about that? And the second question, if possible, what about privileges with flooded areas, or what about is it going this way just on its own? Sberbank. It's true that we discuss it as it's one of the main shareholders of the saving bank. Here we need to comply with a number of rules. We don't want dividends too late to additional risk. We are not talking only about saving banks, but also other banks with state participation. We can say that VTB bank pays 50% of dividend, and now we are thinking about the possibility to approach other banks in the same way. For example, we are now in the process of negotiations with the central bank, and I'm sure that in the near future we'll find a solution to that very matter.
Regarding the taxation of oil industry, we have agreed on the draft to improve and of the taxation of oil in industry through additional tax. So the draft is ready for consideration in State Duma. We consider that this draft is well elaborated, and there will be certain proposals for clarification. We think that this draft can be considered in autumn session. As far as depositions are concerned, there are still no decisions in the government of the Russian Federation. These suggestions are under discussion. Question from Interfax. Tatiana Chimagna, Interfax agency. We would like to ask about the dividends on the bank and the government propose to link dividends with the bank income and to take more than 50% of net income if there are high normatives of income deficit. Does the ministry support such an initiative? We support this initiative to create the unique approach for dividend policy. Considering peculiarities of the bank sector and the necessity to create N1 normative, after the analysis of each bank for this normative, considering all the risks that can influence the outcome of the next year, will define the next year exact suggestions on the level of dividends for key banks with a governmental share. Mic to the speaker. The central bank is a partly state bank. Yes, all banks where there is a direct or indirect participation of the state. There was one more question. Russian newspaper. Lately, there has been several searches of the shadow economy labor force. What is your opinion according to the assessment of this problem, and what does the ministry do to resolve this issue? According to the estimation, we are more close to 20% of shadow labor force. In order not to make a stimulus for paying wages in envelopes, there was a discussion for maneuvers, and this discussion has not been finalized yet. It's under discussion in the government of the Russian Federation, and we still have no decision. Our suggestion was to make the entrepreneurs and the employees to make it more profitable for them to get white wages. It relates to real incomes of the citizens and the pension fund deductions. All advantages of so-called white wages should be reinforced, and the disadvantages of the paying wages in a proper way were very serious and very severe. So the payment of tax, according to the legislation, was not profitable, and our task is to make it more attractive both for employees and employers. In this area, the Ministry of Finance prepared suggestions for tax maneuvers. But I would like to reiterate that there is still no decision in the government. We discuss this topic, and we hope that this year will achieve results of this discussion. Ekaterina from Forbes, what about the maneuvers? You have said that there is no decision, but there is a probability that the decision will be made this year, or it will be postponed after the next year? This year we have a goal to define tax changes and to adopt a necessary legal framework. All innovations should be implemented by 2019, but all these innovations will not increase tax burden. Are there more questions? Then thank you. Thank you very much for participation in the forum. I hope that you had an opportunity to meet interesting people and specialists, and I hope that you have learned something new in this forum. If you managed to get something new from this forum, then our forum was successful. Thank you.